Welcome home, daddies, indeed. Or should I say welcome back? Welcome back to the Draft Daddy podcast. I am your ass, as you already know. And I am here with me. It's just me. That's what you get. Not only have I moved from the greater area of you all and been sequestered to myself here in the Appalachian Mountains, but I have also been sentenced to do the podcast alone. And that is part of the reason we've all been busy. I can give you a little background because it's been a minute since we've been here. A few weeks, about 3 weeks, we've owed you this. Things in the league have been relatively consistent, not a whole lot of movement. Aaron is still kicking butt. I'm still struggling, but nonetheless, we bring you a great podcast today. We're going to go through last week's matchups, which I originally had this recorded way earlier, actually on Monday or Tuesday of this week. But I decided to go ahead and redo this, reshuffle, so we could talk a little bit about playoffs. So we still are going to do a quick recap. Then we're going to dive right into, or spend a lot of time with the playoff picture. Who's in the hunt? Who's got a chance? Who doesn't? Who's out? All those details are coming to you real quick. But you know what? I might be here alone, and doesn't mean we can't do one of these. Yep. Doing the podcast alone, drinking alone. So that's where I'm at. That's about where my team's at. And I think that's a great segue to talk about last week, because last week was the week. Oh, man, I got to take a drink for that. You know, today's podcast is brought to you by Miller Lite. What a refreshing beer for the blue-collared man and for the man who just enjoys a great beer. Anyway, let's get into last week, week 13. It was me taking on the Jacksonville Jacks. I had been dreading week 13 from draft day, really. Draft day on, I was terrified of this week. I had so many people on bye, and coming out of draft day, I was like, man, I hope that I don't need a win in week 13. Fortunately or unfortunately, I didn't really matter. Jack texted me earlier in the week before our matchup, and he said, "Are you ready for this?" I think he said shit show or something like that, and it kind of was. Lucky on his side, he also had a few people, key people out, but kind of a nothing matchup. Didn't really put us in, put us out. We were both out, I believe, before this, but Jack took care of me, 80 to 148, almost 150. He almost doubled me, almost rounded it. I had not a whole lot of good things happening on here. Himself, he did. He had Tua going off. He had Joe Mixon showing up and Deebo Samuel. Man, what a week. For the predictions, even myself last week, Kamish and I both took the Jacks on this one, and I think for good reason. Speaking of Kamish, let's get into his matchup. This was a very important one, kind of the opposite of our matchup. A little bit more fairly scored, too, I would say. We had the Hawaii Wildfires and Mr. Sir Cox-a-Lot. Man, this was a fantastic matchup to watch down to the very last bit of it. But Herbert not really showing up for the Wildfire. Still got the job done. His defense and kicker, it was really, really lacking. But luckily, Jamar Chase showed up along with Mr. Sam Laporta, and he got the job done against Cox, who had a even worse, cumulatively, it was he had 6 points with his kicker and -2 with the Jaguar D. I don't think I would ever choose the Jaguar, even in a streaming scenario. That's a rough one. But Kamish and I both chose the Wildfire, so we're both 2-0 through this one. We're breezing through these guys today. Next, we had TaylorMade 42 million and Team Keegs. And with this one, big upset here, right? We had Team Keegs, who is lower in the point standings, and we'll talk about playoffs here in a second, but Jordan Love really, really showed up and has been showing up, maybe kind of a turning point with, on the flip side, TaylorMade did have Aaron had his one of his key. He had Stephon Diggs. He had him on the bench on the bye this week, but again, not super impactful for him. So if anything, this was an okay week to drop. For this one, the commish had Team Keegs, and I had TaylorMade still, unfortunately. But regardless of Josh Allen being on bye, if anything, it might have actually worked out better for Team Keegs because he wasn't just relying solely on his QB, even though he still got the job done, but his defense and kicker absolutely showing up, giving him a cumulative 28 points between the two. Next, we got Death of the PP and Team E-Dog. Man, PP needed this win big. E-Dog did too, but out of the ones that we would say are going to go a little bit later into the playoffs, I would give this one to PP, and he did. He got it done by the hair of his chinny chin. Brock Purdy and Dak Prescott both showing up with nearly 30 points, and then also both defenses showing up. A few other highlights, Michael Pittman Jr. for Death of the PP did fantastic. Well, Tank Dell is potentially out, or was out. He missed early on and then is missing some more time. Devonta Smith also carrying the way to make it a close game for Team E-Dog, but didn't quite have enough in there, and Death of the PP squeaks away. Both Commish and I had this one as well. Let's look at another matchup that is way less relevant toward anything. Two eliminated teams, Room 40 and the G-Train Rats. I don't think Room 40 was out of it until this week. That might be wrong. I think that is wrong. Pretty sure he was out. I could go back and edit it, but I'm not going to. Trying to get you guys some content as quick as possible. Not a whole lot to highlight here except for Alvin Kamara. For Room 40 was just about, was one of a few highlights, but man, Glenn's team putting up some points comparatively. Tell you what, having A-Chain back really helps G-Train's possibility of not being the loser again, but we'll see. We'll see how that pans out. Him and Mike Evans really carried his team, but filling a huge void that has been there and very apparent for the G-Train Rats. Both Commish and I had 40 winning this one, so we take an L there. All right, let's take a look at this next one. This was another super impactful one. We had the Tarkenton Craw Daddies versus Victorville Vengeance. In this matchup, we had another great quarterback matchup. A good week for quarterbacks across the league. Both defenses and kickers showed up really well, but Tyreek Hill, oh my gosh, he has the most fantasy points in the league comparatively to quarterbacks. I think the top 3 or 4 quarterbacks. It's something absolutely insane. Definitely making a run at MVP. Definitely going to be in the running for fantasy MVP. Gotta be disappointed, I'm sure, for Tarkenton Crawdaddies missing a little bit with putting Jacoby Myers he's on the bye week, which not been overwhelmingly fantastic, but missing a second running back, Gus Edwards, also on the bye. So he put in Rico Dowdle, I believe. Projected 5.7, only scored 2.7, and that could have helped fill the void. Nonetheless, Victorville got it done. Commish had Victorville winning this one. I did have the Tarkenton Crawdaddies, hoping for one of my main train partners out there to really come through. Last but not least, maybe also in the kind of irrelevant games, man, RAP Trayvon Diggs with 65 to Chicago Dogs 132. This is just two opposite ends of the spectrum. I think he might have been the top scorer on the week versus the lowest scorer. Second highest for Chicago Dogs, but nonetheless, not much more to say except for what's going on with Cooper Kupp. And he had Kate Otten and Terry McLaurin in for wide receiver and tight end. This is Trayvon Diggs. And Chris, man, two goose eggs. That is a rough way to spend your week, and still got Patrick Mahomes in, had him in over Geno Smith, and Geno had 30 points, but there wasn't a lot else that was going to be helping you there. Even with Austin Eckler's 3.7 points, Chicago Dogs still had a fantastic showing. So For this one, we both had the dogs, Kamish and I, so that takes us to myself being at 4 and 3, and then Kamish took me this week, and he's got him at 5 and 2. So talk about not power hour, power 10 minutes getting through that, probably in record speed for this podcast. I'm hoping to make this one sweet, quick, but super enjoyable for you guys. Now, let's talk about these playoffs. I'm not talking about practice. We're talking about playoffs, okay? With the playoffs this year, well, you know what? Let's take a little snippet at what we have. Here's just a quick little clip from something special that we have for some of those teams that are going to make the playoffs. All right. I hope I didn't spoil too much for you guys on that one, but let's look at who's in, who's out, who's still in the hunt. Let's start with our potential divisional winners, or one of them who's secured it pretty much since like week 3, I think. I don't know. It's been a long time, and that is TaylorMade. Aaron Zitch, there's no other. I'm your only host, guys. I'm the only host if I'm showing up and doing this thing alone. Sorry. Nonetheless, in the Indie In-Towners League, that would be TaylorMade, $42 million, and I'll tell you what, I don't know if there's a lot stopping him. Everybody's off by now. He's got a clear-cut chance at winning this thing. Got it like a 30% chance at winning it all as it stands right now. So getting the bye, securing the bye, first place overall. Congratulations to Mr. Aaron Zitch. The other division for who's going to be the winner, number one, in that one and secure that spot is a little bit more in the air. We got the Tarkington Crawdads, the Chicago Dogs, and Victorville Vengeance. Still kind of all in the hunt. By the true numbers, Chicago Dogs, there's one very, very unlikely scenario that they don't make it. But for all intents and purposes, we're going to call them 100% in. All three of these teams are sitting at 8 and 5 currently, but there is a little bit of a point spread. Tarkington has 1,400, give or take, 13-7 for Victorville and 13-4-5 for the Chicago Dogs. That means that there's a 44-point difference needed for Victorville, assuming they were all to win. But a win and 2 other losses gives any of these teams the number 1 seed in the out-of-townies. But we're going to go ahead and call them all in. Let's talk about these teams who are out. Can't wait. This is so fun, isn't it? Just a blast. My favorite thing to talk about, probably. We've got the Asheville Amphetamine. We've secured that other bye. So proud of us. We've worked hard for that this year. It's been a great season for us. The G Train Rats, as I don't know if anybody's surprised. No offense. Maybe offense. I don't know. At this point, I feel like you can take a little offense to it. But Room 40, one of our for teams for a while, showed some life in the middle of the season, but just didn't quite have enough at the end to power through. Jacksonville Jacks, man, Jack, I thought your team had the most potential out of anybody in this middle of the pack running, but nothing going on. And then our 2-time defending points champion after the first place team would be Chris Boylan, or this year RIP Trayvon Diggs, and RIP indeed, because he's out of the running and in for the running for the bottom of the league. Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp combo, I don't know if it's going to work out, bud. Hasn't worked out yet, right? We'll have to see. So let's talk about where it gets a little bit more interesting. A lot more interesting, I would say. Let's talk about these teams who are in the hunt. This is Team Keegs, Taylor, not TaylorMade, Taylor, the doctor, Dr. Taylor, Hawaii Wildfire, or Commissioner. And I'll tell you what, I like Cox, or Sir Cox. I like Sir Cox, along with E-Dog. E-Dog, we're going to go into a couple scenarios. More or less, E-Dog needs just as much of a perfect scenario to make the playoffs as the Chicago Dogs do to not make it. So you'll see in these three, we're more or less calling Evan out. Sorry, bud, but that's what you get for still promoting a Michelob Ultra. And again, I want to remind you, this podcast is brought to you by Miller Lite. Man, that's refreshing.
Please drink responsibly.
So out of the 4 teams here on your screen that are shown at the top, so taking out E-Dog, Team Keegs has the highest likelihood of making it in without any scenario. Without running through all, I think there is 64 different possible scenarios of things that could happen here. We're going to go through the most likely scenario based on what's happened this week already. all the way down to all these teams winning, all losing, etc. But we do have two of them facing off, and that's Team Keegs and Sir Coxlot. So most of our impact is going to be seen there, as we'll run through. Reminder again, this is being recorded on Saturday, so Thursday has already happened. So based on current projections, the projected total for each team, this is our most likely scenario. Win or loss, PP should be able to be in by points alone. Win or loss, Wildfire should be in given one other scenario. But Cox, he's projected to win, but not by much. Currently, it's 100.6 for him to 99.2 for Team Keegs. And that's what again, we're throwing E-Dog. Sorry, bud. We're throwing you win or loss, most likely because points you're so far behind, not going to be able to scrape in there. Now, we flip that scenario. Win goes to Keegs. Then exact same thing, just Keegs is in and Team Cox is out. But where it gets a little bit more interesting, both PP, Sir Coxlot, and the Wildfire there's about a 25-point spread between the three, starting with PP, then Wildfire, then Sir Coxlot. So if he gets 24 points greater than, if they both lose, Wildfire and Sir Coxlot, and there's a 24-point spread between the two in Cox's favor, then he will make it over Wildfire. Now, what's the likelihood of that happening? Glad you asked, Blake. Glad you asked. As it stands right now, PP has about an 83% chance. This is given on Fantasy Pros, which I do prefer there. I noticed that their playoff odds are a little bit more accurate. They're giving 72% chance for Wildfire, so this is a less likely scenario on your screen right now. And so it's really coming down to, it's going to be between Keegs and Sir Coxlot. There is a little bit of a battle for who's going to be in those positions, but nonetheless, it's going to be real interesting. So with all that in mind, this is a look at our most likely scenario with the caveat of that, or for more or less the winner of Cox and Keegs. We've got Team TaylorMade in the winner's bracket, who's got that bye somewhere in the 2 to 4 with a win and some points. Any three of these teams between Tarkington, Sea Dogs, and Victorville Vengeance can kind of sit in that 2 to 4 spot. 5 and 6 most likely to be Wildfire and Death of the PP. PP is very alive right now, actually. Good for him. And then our 7 caveat, and on the flip side, the winner or loser will go into there. 4 through 6 more or less secured with Jack, GTR, and Mr. Michelob. 2 and 3 fighting for who will play me after the next week will most likely be Matt and Chris Boylan, and then myself. I've got the bad bye, but maybe did I hurt somebody? Did I do something to have to go through all of this and end up at the end of the podcast just being the one to turn around and say, yeah, so all these people are doing great except for myself? I'm not sure. If I've hurt you, I'm sorry. Well, that kind of wraps it up. It's Saturday. It's a little rainy out here. I think it was rainy at home for you guys. We're trying to get some golf around, but we're just sitting here. I'm enjoying the NHL season. That's where a lot of my energy is. I've got other leagues, which is good, but you guys don't want to hear me talk about that. I think it's time to wrap this thing up. We're going to go sub 20 minutes with your one and only ass. Still here bringing you the content, regardless of my scenario. And best of luck to those of you who have clinched your playoff spots. And best of luck to you who are still working, trying to nudge your way in. I think it's going to be a fun race to the finish. Some new teams getting in there this year for the playoffs, so it's fun to see the love being spread around the league. And to those of us down here in the losers bracket, best of luck to us to not be the losers, I guess. Man, I'm tired of talking about this, making me real sad. Happy Saturday. You guys will be hearing this if you're hearing it Sunday. It's football day, right? It's football day. All right, guys. Love you guys so much. We'll see you next week with everybody coming back. We'll have our full host panel back, our full whatever you want to call us. We'll have the cast daddies back on here. We're gonna look through. We're gonna make some predictions. We're gonna make some bold predictions about who we think's gonna win the league, who we think's gonna lose the league. Who knows who it could be? Who knows? I don't know, but here's a fun song to cheer me up and cheer you all up. Well, some of you don't need cheering up. Oh, man, sad again. All right, love you, boys.